Welcome to Faith Speaks. I'm your host, Dick Patten, as we record here from Immaculate Heart of Mary Church and in the Activity Center. We once again thank them for allowing us to do this here, and we're talking about our faith. And many times it doesn't takes a tragedy like what happened over in Belgium to really think back about our faith and what we so much we have to be thankful for. And today my guest is Paul Brogan, and we're going to do a little reminiscing about his time he went to St. John's Regional School at that time for some of it, and then Bishop Brady after that.
Actually, Dick, I went to St. Peter's.
Oh, St. Peter's.
Yes, over on Walker and Bradley
That's
Street.
True, yes.
Because that was still an area, the north end of Concord. If you were Catholic and wanted to go to school, you went to St. Peter's.
Was that the big red brick building,
yes,
right?
Which is the Association for the Blind
now.
And actually the red part of the building next to it was the original St. Peter's Church.
Yeah,
before the church on North State Street was built.
I remember that.
And it was amazing. I mean, I could not imagine not having had that educational opportunity. It was wonderful.
But why did your family switch you at that time? Why didn't you start in at first grade in the parochial schools?
Well, it was costly for the time.
I know.
We lived on Franklin Street when I was in kindergarten, so I went to Walker School for kindergarten.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Academy Street and went to Kimball School at first, Miss O'Mara, and then my second grade teacher there was Miss Brogan. She's now Nancy Mollica. No relation, Brogan. But
oh really?
Yeah, Nancy Mollica was.
She sits behind me in church every week.
Yes, well, her maiden name was Nancy Brogan, and she was my mention me to her, and she'll tell wonderful stories.
And her husband was
Jack,
a teacher.
Yes,
he was a teacher.
Yes, and so she was my second grade, but then there was very much a push in the parish to have your children know their faith instead of just going to catechism classes, which is what it was called at the time.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Later became, I think, Confraternity of Christian Doctrine,
really?
CCD.
Yeah.
But so the parish, St. Peter's Parish, was willing to pay one half of the tuition for any children from the parish that wanted to go there. So the parents were only responsible for half of it. And so in third grade, I started at St. Peter's and took to it, just loved it. I just loved the fact that we had two grades in one room, third and fourth were in one room, and the entire structure and the learning was accelerated. There was a lot more energy put into it. And there was, I think, the nuns, because the nuns received very little pay. They received basically a stipend for teaching. But they seemed to put so much into their teaching because this was part of their vocation. And there was everything was very much laced with your religion. And at that time, late 50s, early 60s, the Catholic Church was just thriving and prospering. And I love the notion in the classroom you had a crucifix, you had lovely, pictures of particular religion scenes, and for about a half hour each day you had your religion portion, the Baltimore Catechism, and you learned from that, and it was an entirely different feel about it. And part of it was probably because it was private school. So there was an entirely different discipline that could be imposed and a structure than you could have in the public schools.
But then you went to Runlet for a couple of years. They didn't have a seventh or eighth.
They had a seventh and eighth, but because I was then going to be going to a big high school, instead of just this school that had 160 people or so in it, somebody felt that, well, he needs to be exposed to a large school so the transition into Bishop Brady won't be so jarring. I didn't agree with that. I was getting A's and B's at St. Peter's. At Runlet, I got D's and E's and had to take summer class to repeat, a couple of subjects.
Why do you think it was the difference?
Because I think going from a school that has about 160, 170 people in the entire school, and these are also people from Sunday Mass and just interacting with, to going to a school with 1,200 people in it and all of that, I'm sure you found that same kind of situation. It's a rude awakening, and it's overwhelming, I think, in the magnitude of it.
Yeah, it is.
And the fact that, suddenly you're back to going to Sunday school classes and things like that, and it's just a whole different feel for your faith, because you're aware at every moment, at least then in the Catholic school, that you are a Catholic, and it's something to be very proud of. I mean, today, for instance, that we're taping this, Holy Thursday, now we would leave class about 2 o'clock, and we would all walk over to St. Peter's Church on North State. And as a school, we would do the Stations of the Cross. And it was a very solemn and a very important part of our school.
Sure.
And the same on May 1st. We would do the processional for Mary. We would carry the statue of Mary, singing, "O Mary, we crown thee with blossoms today, Queen of the Angels, Queen of the May," a very pretty song, while we walked from the school on Walker and Bradley over to the church. And we would bring it in, and then one student would have the job of crowning Mary with the flowers. And it was, so you had your religion playing a role in everything, and I think it enhanced the learning experience, and it also gave you a different perspective on your faith, as it being a part of everyday life, even though the religious class portion was only about a half hour a day, but it's still, everything was ultimately built around the fact that you were here. And we had people come in to talk to us about vocations, both people from priests, monks, brothers, sisters, and they would come in and talk to us, because at that time it was considered the greatest honor that a family could have if one of your children had a vocation, either to be a nun or a priest.
Yeah, I heard
and
that.
And a number of students did eventually go into the seminary, and because it wasn't that you were being forced to, but it was presented as an option for what you might want to consider doing. And the sisters that taught you, the nuns, were certainly an example, because they never lost their tempers, really, unless really provoked. But they never got sick. They were never out ill. They were never coughed or sneezed. I mean, they seemed completely, balanced in what they were doing, and it made it seem like it was a wonderful option and an opportunity.
Now, were they in the full habit when you were there?
Completely, the total habit at that time.
Because there were some, I think, if I remember right, either St. John's or Immaculate Heart, that just had the, not veil, but something on the headpiece on. And
well, that was, when I was in high school, the third year, because Brady was 9, 10, 11, and 12. And in 11th grade, they started to modify the habit, and they took away some of this, and it became up here.
Yes.
And a dress that was like halfway between the knees and the ankle, and sensible shoes. So it began to change at that time. But in grammar school, it was the complete, total habit. And it was just, I don't know, you were a bit in awe, maybe a bit in fear, and all of that. But ultimately, it just seemed to work. And even religion played a little role when we had spelling bees. And they took a great deal of pride in the spelling, geography, and certain things. If you could name every state and every state capital, things like that, you would receive a holy card. And that was a prized possession to get a holy card. The beautiful picture or painting of some religious scene, maybe Mary appearing to the three children at Fatima, or to Bernadette, or one of those. And so that was just such an honor. You took it home and showed it to your parents, and they were just, I usually got 25 cents because I had gotten a holy card, so 25 cents was great. I could get a hot fudge sundae at Abbott's Pharmacy on Washington Street. But it was just, so even in the geography portion or spelling in English, religion had a place in that what you were given was a holy card. And they became treasured. You kept them in a book, and you were very, it was like a photo album almost.
Sure.
But you also wanted to please the nuns, so you worked very hard to do that too.
Now did you have to wear uniforms?
Not in grammar school then. You had to wear, you had to wear nice pants, no corduroys, no jeans, a nice shirt with a bow tie, a white shirt with a bow tie, but no jacket or anything like that. That was at Brady. We had the blazer, the green blazer, black pants, white shirt, and the Brady tie that you wore.
Because I noticed at St. John's, the kids down there have the red outfit, uniforms. I noticed that.
And 55 years ago, they didn't have to wear, but you did have to look nice, and there had to be a certain consistency in how you appeared, because it also cut down on that whole kind of peer thing.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly at Brady, because you wore a uniform and you weren't competing with, she's got nice clothes and I can't afford them, and therefore I'm on the out. Which, how that can happen.
Well, that was the same thing. It was terrible. Because you could wear the Beatles stuff and all that jazz, and some of us couldn't afford that.
And those from up on the hill had their, they could wear certain things that nobody else could afford, and it was, But it was very much focused on.
How did with Good Friday coming, of course, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, what did you have to do in class for that? Was there any school at all?
There was no school on Good Friday.
Okay.
But we were expected to maintain a very solemn or low profile. In other words, you didn't go out to the park and play ball and do those things. You weren't supposed to go to the movies. You weren't supposed to... you were supposed to reflect. You had the day off. Yeah, you could do homework or get caught up or work on a book report or something, but it wasn't a day for rowdiness. No. And because it was the day that Christ was put to death, and so it was very. And then on Saturday, you didn't have the Saturday masses to honor your Sunday obligation. So there was a genuine build-up toward Easter Sunday morning. I mean, that was probably right up there with midnight mass at Christmas time as far as being a celebration and a joyous time. 8:15 mass was usually the mass that families and children went to. And you didn't want to miss it. I mean, everybody, of course, wore their new clothes, but it was just a real celebration that Christ had risen, and there was just a happiness when you walked in for the 8:15 mass. All of the lilies had been put out. Nuns back then were usually the people who decorated the altar for the various, because they were over on North State Street, the convent, next to the North Cemetery. The building Jim McKay lives in was the convent.
Oh, really?
And so they would come over and they got the altar all ready. And then when you arrived at 10 minutes of 8 and walked in, and the lights and the beautiful lilies, it was just a wonderful sense. And the organ playing. Sister Mary John was the organist at the time, and she was the 3rd and 4th grade teacher. And the choir was made up of the 7th and 8th grade. And it was just truly a wonderful feeling then. And part of it was that whole 6 week anticipation. And, you know, we were reminded to go to confession every Saturday because you could commit a sin and you did not want to not be in a state of grace. And, you know, so there were the reminders. But overall, the basic class structure, with the exception of the catechism portion, you know, we learned what everyone else learned, you know, with respect to geography and arithmetic and, you know, all of the other subjects.
Interesting. And then, so all the nuns, and when did you, well, during your time in high school, was there a trend of the nuns kind of not slacking off, but did you start to see more lay people come in?
Yes. When I started at Brady, Mother Arthur was the principal. Father Goodwin, who's still alive and I stay in touch with, he's in Manchester now, he became the administrator afterwards. Father Limoges was there at first. And I think we had complete nuns and 2 or 3 priests teaching. But by the time I left, we had Terry Donovan Odell had started as a lay teacher. We had Harvey Smith, Frank Monahan. And we had more because not as many girls were joining the convent at the time. As the 60s became the 70s, they were less interested in the, you know, the sacrifices they had to make by becoming nuns. Even though the Sisters of Mercy were pretty much located here in New Hampshire, and this was, you know, who taught there, and they had the Mother House in Wyndham, that beautiful castle. But fewer and fewer. I think only one girl from my class had a vocation, and none of the males had a vocation. So out of 155 or something. So it had clearly started to change by that time. And so the school began to, which is why tuition began to markedly go up, because you could pay the nuns and the religious a very minimal amount because it was part of their vocation. But you couldn't do that to somebody like Harvey Smith, who was also coaching track, and Frank Monahan was the basketball coach.
Now, see, I had Mr. Monahan up at Concord High School in 12th grade. He taught accounting. But what was funny with him was if you got him talking about basketball,
that was it. The rest of the class. He loved sports, and I think that, you know, it was a requirement. Back then, you couldn't just be the coach. You had to, you know, we're not going to pay you just to coach. You have got to also teach a class. And I think that, you know, was that whole change in everything that happened. But their hearts were really in, you know, I mean, Ed Sirica would have much rather done, you know, he was the football coach, right, at Concord High, and he also ran the driver ed program. And I think
he was my 10th grade. I want to say 10th grade geography teacher. I think he was.
But he would have rather have just done the sports things. I think. But he's in Connecticut. He's doing well. I hear from him once in a while. Yep. Yeah. Yes.
I wonder where Mr. Spears is.
I don't know.
Jerome Spears.
Don't know.
He was 10th grade teacher. But it was just, I mean, and then of course St. John's had such a nice musical marching band.
Yes, they did.
But Bishop Reddy never, they had it 1 year.
Yes.
And then that was it.
No. And we had a great drama program because Bob Stewart from the Community Players came in and did the drama program on his own time. But there was nothing. There was no music class per se, and we really had nothing that for that particular aspect or anything. So, which is too bad, because when St. John's was on Pleasant Street, the high school was on Pleasant Street, I remember the band that they had. And I don't know who their musical director was and why that individual didn't move on when, Brady opened. Brady opened in 64, and St. John's, the high school, closed in June of 63, and there was an immediate transition. But I would have thought it would have been wonderful, because with 600 students at Brady, you had to have 30 or 40 who had a musical.
Well, we've got the band on family tapes that my father took of the parades. And you knew what St. John's, because they had the white uniforms.
Yes, they did.
And then I remember I had to be in the 70s, but one year Paul Giles got them going up there, and they had the green uniforms. We never saw them again. And no one never mentioned it.
No. Maybe there wasn't the room at the time to have a music room. You would have had to do it in the gym, but the gym was also used for theater because they had the stage in it, and it was used for the phys ed classes, which they started. So perhaps there wasn't a place where the band could technically rehearse, or something like that. But with all of the additions that they put on up there, I would have thought that might have been something they would have considered, because I think it's a wonderful outlet if you know how to play an instrument, and a wonderful way to be a part of.
So do you have no regrets of going to a Catholic school?
No, I have great memories, absolutely wonderful memories. It was the most amazing education.
And the nuns didn't come around and crack your knuckles with a ruler or something?
Yardstick. Only if you provoked or did something that was absolutely beyond the pale, or if you used the Lord's name in vain. That never was allowed. And if you talked back to them, I may have told that story before. One student, a local Concord resident, was taken out into the hallway, lifted up by sister, and hung on the coat rack for an hour. He dangled there by his belt. And he never talked back again. Never talked back. No, he said he hadn't done his assignment, and he didn't have to do it, and she couldn't make him do it, and he didn't care what she did. So she went and got Sister Teresa, the principal, who came down, took him out into the hallway. He thought he was going to be talked to. She lifted him up, hung him on the hook, and he dangled there for an hour. When he went home and complained to his parents, they said Sister would not have done it unless there was a good reason, and he got punished again.
Now, today...
you couldn't do that today.
If you had done that today, can you imagine?
Lawsuits and lawyers getting rich. But he never again spoke back.
No,
and nobody else did. You learn the lesson, and unfortunately that's how it had to be to learn that lesson. But had a mouth on him, used words that a third grader shouldn't know, and they were very focused on. They were charged with the responsibility to help shape and mold all of us, not just in education, but in life values. And that was part of their role. If you were a teaching nun, there were other nuns who did, other things, but they took it very seriously. You didn't have nuns cracking jokes and saying funny things or anything like that, but you didn't expect that. If you wanted to watch Ingrid Bergman and the Bells of St. Mary's, you saw, the Happy Nun. But it was a wonderful, wonderful...
Now, did you do the Lord's Prayer every morning in the opening, the Pledge of Allegiance and all that? Did you do the Lord's Prayer?
We always did the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we did a morning prayer. I guess it was the Lord's Prayer.
Now, did you do the Rosary at all every day?
No, we didn't do the Rosary every day. Once in a great while, there would be a Rosary if it was for a particular reason or something. There was a horrible fire when I was in third grade at a school, Our Lady of the Angels School in Chicago, and nuns died, students died. It was a horrible situation. And for 5 days after that, we said it for the souls of those who were lost. And so for something like that, but And Stations of the Cross, again, we would do like on Holy Thursday, and there were once in a while we would all go over to the church and do that. So we learned those things,
Yeah.
which was important to learn.
Huh. Interesting. Boy, I mean, I myself, I know I would like to have gone to something like that, because I think you would have gotten a better education. I'm not saying a bad one, but it would be better,
No.
you know?
I think you would have thrived, though, because I
'Cause-
think there was a nurturing feeling that you probably couldn't have in a school the size of Runlet, that you would
No,
get,
no, yeah.
you know, and
Sure.
and when you're having teachers like the nuns who were basically unselfish, and it wasn't about, gee, I'm getting paid benefits and all of these things, and the focus is a totally different focus. I think it makes a tremendous difference.
Oh, I really appreciate you coming in, Paul, and doing this show along
My
with
pleasure.
the other one, and with Faith Speaks. It's just because there's so much that I wouldn't know how Catholic education was. I had some friends who went to the Catholic schools, and we wouldn't really hear much about it, what they did, because we were Protestant at the time.
Right.
But I just myself would definitely consider, if I had children, they would be going to a private school like that. But I don't know. Well, we're coming to a close of Faith Speaks, and I want to thank once again my valued director over there, Ian. I can't imagine him hanging from a coat rack, though, being in trouble. But
no, I don't think we'll have to do that.
no, I think we'll have to, crack him on the knuckles. But we are part of Catholic Radio, WICX 102.7 FM, and please give us a call and let us know what you think of the show. And we'd love to have you come on as a guest to talk about your faith and Faith Speaks. So please, on Saturdays and Sundays, you'll hear the show. With that in mind, I'm your host, Dick Patten. Say our prayer every night, every day before you go to bed in the morning, and thanking the Lord for a wonderful time in your life. So with that, have a great day.